Welcome, everybody, to a new edition of Inside Boxing Daily. I am your host for tonight, Jeremiah J. Preisser, and with me is the amicable John Raspanti. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Jeremiah. How you doing, man?
I am doing very, very well, and I suppose before we get into the discussion, I guess I got to go over the sponsors. We know how important those can be. We're brought to you by the Retired Boxers Foundation, Jackie Richardson, Alex Ramos, good people. Boxers do not have 401ks, so if you go there, pitch something out, have these people, make living a bit easier on them. They would much appreciate it. We're also brought to you by Sports Autographs. That is with a Z. They sell all sorts of boxing memorabilia over there. If you use Truth15, you get 15% off any purchases. We're also brought to you by BetNow.eu. Click on the banner, use Truth50 as a promo code, get a little something back if you bet. Anyways, let's start with the good stuff, because this has been sticking in my mind all week. And thankfully, I've noticed that a lot of hardcore boxing fans are not making a big deal about Terrence Crawford getting hurt against Aegis Kavialauskas. But some people, there is a certain segment, and we see certain alliances in the boxing community where some people are, pro-PBC, some people are more focused on ESPN. Some people are making a big deal about it. They say, hey, he got rocked by a bum, he got rocked by a nobody. And the thing that has really stuck with me is that most reasonable people are not making a big deal about it, and especially long-time boxing people understand that it's just part of the game. It's interwoven into the very fabric itself. And when you look at the list of just welterweights inside the top 10 who have been dropped, stunned, knocked out, it's pretty much all of them. The only person that I can't quite think about or I can't quite pinpoint is Yordenis Ugas, who I don't think I've seen stunned. But if you look at Errol Spence, who's the number one ranked guy, I believe universally, I pointed out on Facebook the other day, he was stunned by Emmanuel Larte in his, I believe, his 9th or 10th professional bout at the end of the 7th round. Not dropped, but he was hurt. You look at Manny Pacquiao, obviously he's been stunned. He was hurt and stopped even as a small guy. Yet he's been able to move up in weight and take good, hard, clean punches from rock-solid hitters. You have Sean Porter, who's dropped by Adrian Broner in the 12th round with a left hook. You have Danny Garcia, who was hurt. I believe he was hurt in the 10th round by Zab Judah from a left hand. Kavialauskas was obviously stopped. It's not an uncommon sight at all, and therefore nobody really should be hanging on to this, especially with what Terrence Crawford did after the fact.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just something to talk about. He looked like he had his bell rung a little bit. He recovered very quickly. It wasn't like he was that hurt. Boxing. You get hit sometimes. That's just the way it is. And Crawford in his career, I have seen him get hit. I think he got hit pretty hard by Gamboa, if I remember correctly, Jeremiah. And he might have been a little buzzed by that a number of years ago in Nebraska, if I'm remembering correctly. And he recovered him, of course, and stopped Gamboa. It happens. My mind goes back to the old days, and I don't know why this popped into my head, but I remember reading when Joe Louis, here we're going way back, fought a guy named Tammy Morelli, who was an Italian heavyweight who could punch. He almost knocked Joe Louis out of the ring in the first round. He hit him with a right hand and sent him into the ropes, and then Joe Louis came back and knocked him out in the first round. And Joe Louis, obviously acknowledged by everyone as one of the greatest heavyweights. Some people say the greatest heavyweights. So it happens, and I didn't think Crawford looked all that great in that fight, but that was more just the way he was fighting that fight, and that's okay too. Fighters can't look great all the time either. And I thought about Lomachenko. I think Campbell hit Lomachenko with an uppercut in their fight of a few months ago, and you could see it kind of buzzed them a little bit. So it happens, and the Mean Machine is not a bum. The guy's a good fighter. He's got a good amateur pedigree, and just because I think because Crawford is a pound-for-pound guy, too, and it figured it would be a shoe-in fight. But that's the thing about boxing. It's like that in all sports, though, if you think about it. How many times have you seen a really good football team that they're like 10-2, and they play a team 2-10, and sometimes the 2-10 team manages to win, or it's close, or wow, what a surprise. I mean, it just happens in sports. And the way Terrence, it's just sort of, if anything, it might woke him up a little bit in the sense where he said, okay, well, this guy's more than I thought, and I thought maybe he might have not taken him very seriously, possibly. You got people around you, I'm just speculating, telling you, this guy's not very good, like you're talking about on social media, and you start believing that, and maybe you don't work as hard as you normally would, you might get caught. But as I said, he's been hit before, and it just seems like he recovers and always recovers and wins. And the way he won was very impressive. I mean, the guy is a very competitive, determined. It was like he said, nope, okay, game on. Now I'm serious. Now I'm going to really start breaking you down. I'm going to take some more punches, but I'm going to start breaking you down. So a win is a win. I don't know why people like to do that, but I guess, again, the only thing I can think of is it was unexpected. And so if it's unexpected, you tend to make more of what it was, and no big deal. When it happened, when I was watching it, I didn't go, oh, or like when Joshua got knocked down against Ruiz, the first fight, you knew that was a big deal. I didn't think this was a big deal at all. I thought it was a knockdown. I thought he might have been buzzed for a few seconds, but I didn't think the Mean Machine was going to win. I didn't. Even after I thought, oh, that's interesting. That happens, and then just move on, and then we know what happened. So no biggie.
Yeah, it was almost Preisser-esque in its in the way it played out. That's what came to my mind when I saw him get up. And I mean, in the post-fight interview, he did get a bit wrong, and I do think he was stunned. You know, he did claim that afterwards he came right at Kavaliauskas, and I rewatched the third round just to fact check, and he was wrong. He was tentative. You could see that he was buzzed, but it was almost Preisser-esque in the fact that it just seemed, like you said, it seemed to wake him up. He put things in a perspective, and the fact that he got mean about it and decided, right then and there, you could see, in the next round that he was going to get this guy out of there, even if it, the chance, he had to take more chances than he would have, people would have liked to have seen him take. And the thing about it too is, we're not only talking about being hurt, but even the fact struggling with guys who are often seen as not much of a threat is almost a universal thing too. I mean, Ali had his struggles with guys you wouldn't expect, right? Yep. The very best guys. I mean, I think Harry Greb lost to Soldier Barfield. I can imagine that was probably unseen at the time. There are tons and tons of examples of guys, just because stylistically you don't match up that well, they're just tough for you. And it happens, especially in a game like boxing. It's not like baseball. As much as I like baseball, it's not as if you can go 0 for 4 and go on to the next day, worry about your batting average. In boxing, if you take one punch, sometimes that's all it can be. And a lot of times our predictive powers are not, you would think that a lot of us would be, 90%, in predicting these fights, but you just never know. You just never know. But it was a damn good performance. I like Kavaliauskas. I know him on a personal level. So I was hoping that he would do well for himself. Yeah, and he ended up exceeding my expectations and that of the general public. So good for him. But from here, the dilemma is now, where does Terrence Crawford go? We all recognize that there's a big political divide. I'm not as into it as others, of course. I'm not sitting here right on the coattails of any of these guys. I just want to see the best fights get made. And so, where do we go? Where does Terrence Crawford go? I saw Dan Raphael opine yesterday that Terrence Crawford should move to 154 and fight Patrick Teixeira. Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but I suppose that is an option. I don't like it personally because I'm not in favor of moving up just for the sake of grabbing a trinket, inflating your resume, and then calling yourself a 4-division champion. When Teixeira is clearly the weakest title holder of all, he's frankly not an elite level operator, and to me it doesn't really do a whole lot for the legacy. It just bloats credentials even more than I think he should. But given that, where should he go from here?
Yeah, let me say that I agree with you too. I don't want him to move up to 154. I don't think he's a natural 154. He's a natural he's 140, and 147 is pushing it. He's not a very big guy. Getting up to 154, Teixeira, I guess that's how we pronounce it, right? I don't want him to do that either. There's talk, and I know you know this, that Sean Porter could be next for Terence Crawford. And I like that. I like that fight because Sean he makes everybody fight, and he makes everybody be focused. And he took Errol Spence to hell and back. He didn't beat him, but he sure made him work. And he was right there with them all the way. Got hurt, he struggled at the end, got hurt, down, but he was there. And I think Errol Spence was really impressed after the fight. I really remember, wow, this guy I think he didn't think, because he kept talking about he was going to knock out Sean Porter, and no, it didn't happen. So I hope that's what happens, because Terence Crawford, I feel for the guy, because what is he supposed to do? He's promoted by one of the supposed best promoters, been around forever. He's 88 years old. He's got all this experience, but with all this the way it is now, and I'm like you, I'm not into I can't quote a lot of things from the politics. I don't pay much attention to it. I just want to see the best guys fight the best guys. Same thing. So obviously, if Errol Spence does fight again, hopefully, we don't know what's going on there, it should be Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. But if Terence Crawford fights next year a good guy, I hope it is Sean Porter, because that would be a good fight, I believe, and he should fight somebody like that. I mean, he fought his mandatory and he won, so let's see. But like I said, he's got Bob Arum, who's such a respected promoter. What's he supposed to do if he says, okay, look, I'm done with Bob Arum, I want to break my contract? Well, then he won't fight for God knows how long, because Arum will take him to court, right? So he'd be on the sidelines for 2 years or something like that. He's 32 years old. Not that that's old really in boxing really anymore, and he's not an old 32, obviously, but still, he could lose a couple of years because Arum wouldn't allow him to fight, I don't think, as he'd be under contract with him. So what does he do? He has to pretty much, he keeps saying, I want to fight all the top guys. If they can't make the fight with the other top guys, what is he supposed to do? So he's really in a pickle, right?
Yeah, he is.
So I hope he gets Porter. That would be a good fight, don't you think?
Yeah, I'd like that. I mean, I think that's the best option. I mean, of what seems realistic, because Danny Garcia seems to have something lined up against Ivan Redkach. Mikey Garcia is in against Jesse Vargas. Errol Spence obviously threw a wrench into everybody's plans with the Ferrari crash. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like Sean Porter is the best option. And Terence Crawford, to his credit, pointed out that it's not so much the promoters, it's just a matter of the fighters wanting to fight. He didn't even seem as if he was thinking about the political divide, which is a good thing. He should be doing that and trying to cross. He should be reaching across the aisle and trying to shake hands so he can get some of these fights. And the thing about it too is Sean Porter not only brings brings the fight to somebody like Terrence Crawford and would make it exciting, but it would give him yet another option. That's kind of why it seems a bit more plausible, too, because since Porter had just lost, it doesn't seem as if, and again, I don't know Al Heyman. I'm not rubbing elbows with the guy. Don't know him at all, really. But it seems as if coming off something like that, we may be able to get something because, Al Heyman has already, Sean Porter's already fought Kell Brook, Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia, right? It already seems as if he's already fought so many of the top guys that this would be a damn good way to get him yet another payday, and it's a way of possibly bringing yet another alphabet title under the PBC's banner. It seems unlikely, of course, but it just seems as if it would be worth the risk if you were Al Heyman. I suppose, and I know Top Rank had brought this up before, of possibly fighting Kell Brook. Kell Brook, funny enough, did beat Sean Porter, but after the beat down he took from Golovkin and the stoppage late against Errol Spence, it doesn't seem as if he's as close to his prime as someone like Sean Porter is, but Brook does sell pretty well. I don't know. What do you think about that fight? That seems like that might be plausible too.
Yeah, but I agree with you. He's nearer the end of his career, I believe, than he was. And if this was a few years ago, that would be one hell of a fight. I think he spoke of retiring, Kell Brook, but I guess he hasn't officially retired. So if they bring him back, I guess, but I prefer the Porter fight just because I want to see Terrence Crawford in there with somebody that I think universally we believe is going to give him a really good fight. I think Kell Brook would hang with Crawford for a few rounds, and then Crawford would just break him down and stop him. He might do the same thing with Sean Porter, but Sean has shown so much guts and heart and determination and adaptability and versatility in his fights where he can fight certain ways because he's such a good athlete that I think it would be an interesting mind game in a sense, or a chess match in some respects between Crawford and Porter because Porter always has a game plan going in. And that would make it fun for us purists who love that kind of stuff and don't just need two guys standing in the middle of the ring throwing punches at each other. We know they're thinking. It is the sweet science. So that's the one I want. But the name, of course, Kell Brook, he signs his former champion. But, he seems to be pretty brittle now, Jeremiah, and more fragile, obviously, than he was. And I don't know how serious that talk is about Terrence fighting him, but I just hope that it's Crawford and Porter next year because I think that would be a dandy. I do.
Okay, and there's a couple other options that I'll throw at you that I've thought about because the options are thin at welterweight. We all recognize that. But what if Jose Carlos Ramirez came up or Regis Prograis? I don't think Prograis is tied to one of these big name people. I think he's tied to DeBella, so who can do business with either one of these guys. So what about bringing somebody up from 140 like Ramirez or Prograis?
I love that too. Yeah, I thought about that too a few days ago. Prograis and Ramirez are both good fighters. Ramirez wants to fight Josh Taylor, obviously, at some point, but heck, if they offered him enough money and gave him a chance against Terrence Crawford, he'd probably take it. And Prograis, we know he lost to Josh Taylor. That was a hell of a fight. I thought he was going to win that fight, actually, and he lost. But and he did lose. But that didn't hurt him. I don't think it harmed him at all. And it's surprising in this day and age where one loss can send your career spiraling. But I don't think that hurt him because he was right there and had some real good moments. But, yeah, I like that too because I think both of them are good fighters. Ramirez, the way he knocked out Hooker, that was really impressive. I think he surprises me, Jeremiah, because I've always thought he was good. I saw him in person in Fresno, but he seems better. With Robert Garcia, he seems like a better fighter now, a better all-around fighter. He's very driven, like most fighters, but he really works harder than a lot of guys. And his skill level, like I said, I think in the last 2-3 years, he's improving still. And it all came together against Hooker. I mean, that was a fantastic performance. So that would be a very interesting fight. I don't know, again, how serious it is. But, yeah, I would like that. Either of them fighting Crawford would be really fun to watch.
Yeah, and personally, I would err on the side of Prograis getting the shot first, mainly because I want to see, now that Taylor and Prograis got their thing out of the way, I'd like to see Ramirez get a shot at Taylor just to make sure that he is the number one guy at 140. I mean, to me, he is the number one ranked fighter at 140 pounds. He's earned it. But I just want to see him fight Ramirez just so we know, just so there's no confusion there. And so Prograis, to me, would be a better initial option. But obviously Sean Porter would be the best of the best. So let's hope that comes off. I mean, it's time. I mean, it just really is time for Crawford to get on with it. And again, I don't mean any disrespect to Crawford at all. It's just, I'm just reiterating what everybody is saying. We just want to see him fight against the very best, so we know that he's, an elite level operator. I mean, he looks the part. I mean, but looking and being can be different things. Really, I just want to see him fight Spence, but I don't know what condition Spence is in. So, again, we don't know. Anyways, we'll move on to Canelo Alvarez being named ESPN's Fighter of the Year. I think it's a good choice. I don't have any problem with it at all. I mean, there are a number of candidates you can go with. A few guys won the World Boxing Super Series in their divisions, like Inoue, Josh Taylor, who we previously mentioned. But I really have no issue with Canelo winning. And I know a lot of people are not big fans of Alvarez. I get it. He feels like a cog in the machine. He's the golden boy. He's golden boy's golden boy. He's gotten controversial decisions in the past. I get it. I really do. The PED thing, again, I understand. But when you break down the achievements of 2019, you look at Danny Jacobs, who was the number 3 middleweight in the world, and right behind Golovkin, who some people felt that Jacobs beat Golovkin. Most people did not. Most people edged it for Golovkin. But what I'm saying is Jacobs was right there with Golovkin. There's not a big discernible skill difference between the two. And so you have the number 3 middleweight in the world, and then you've got moving up 15 pounds at beating Sergey Kovalev, who, say what you want of his age, he was a top 5 light heavyweight, and he still was beating top 10 light heavyweights. I mean, Yard was ranked, if I'm not mistaken, and so was Lighter Alvarez. So he was obviously still a world-class operator. His skills have been diminished, clearly, but I thought it was a good 2019 for Alvarez. What do you think?
Yeah, it was. The win over Jacobs, close, but he won it. And then the Kovalev fight, we kind of expected that because Kovalev, as we know, is past it in a lot of ways. But still, to move up to the light heavyweight division and knock out Kovalev, and he knocked him out. Didn't just knock him down, he knocked him out. Never happened to Kovalev, I don't believe. Maybe since his amateur days. Actually, I don't think it's ever happened to him. That was certainly impressive. The only problem I have, and this is the purist coming in, is he only fought twice, and I don't like it that these guys don't fight very often anymore. That bothers me. The other guy that I think deserves some consideration, believe it or not, is Pacquiao. Jeremiah, he beat Broner, of course, which we expected, but then his victory over Thurman was a great victory for a 40-year-old part-time senator. That was just an incredible achievement to me to do that. in a way, of course, like you said, is tremendous. I think fight of the year with Nonito Donaire, maybe possibly, and Josh Taylor. But the guy that I'm thinking of, and I guess I'm going to reveal it tonight, and I don't know if I'm going to go this way because I have to do these for Max Boxing, Jeremiah, is I'm thinking about Emmanuel Navarrete, the little WBA, I think, super bantamweight champion who fought 4 times this year. He's the guy that rematched earlier in the year with, I think it's pronounced Dogbu, the guy that he beat to win the title, and he had 3 more knockouts. So he had 4 fights this year, 4 knockout victories, not against super quality opposition. He beat Flash Orlorde's grandson, I think, but still, he's fighting a lot. He's improving still. I like it that he wants to fight a lot. It's throwback, so of course I like that. I mean, I'm not saying that he's my fighter of the year, but I was really impressed with him. But your points are very valid about Canelo. 2 fights, 2 wins, 2 top guys. Even if, like we said, Kovalev was not what he was, he's still one of the best light heavyweights. He was the light heavyweight champion of the world. He did beat Yard. He did knock him out. So, yeah, I don't really have a problem with it. It's just like you said, you made very good points. Canelo is controversial. He's very polarizing. So people are going to go, he's getting it because he's Canelo and he didn't earn it. But I don't really have a problem with it. At first, when I first heard it, I went, and then I started to think about it. I thought, well, yeah, those are solid points. And he had a good year. And he's talking about fighting some of the top guys next year. He's talking about Saunders, and he's talking about Callum Smith. So he wants to fight the guys. And Golovkin's back in the mix, of course, which, yeah. So that's for the discussion for another day. So it's fine. But the thing is, like I said, my only problem is I tend to go against the grain sometimes. And I'm thinking about Navarrete, but I certainly see the argument with Canelo being the fight of the year. I really have no problem with it.
Yeah, and if I were to make my choice tonight, it would be Canelo Alvarez. And here's my rationale. For me, I just try to be as objective as I can. I mean, you can't be, disconnected entirely. I mean, it's tough. Again, you look at Canelo. His past, and you know what I mean. Again, I understand why it's easy to dislike him. I really do. But here is my thing: is when you compare Danny Jacobs to the guys the other contestants fought. I mean, is Danny Jacobs better than Regis Prograis? Yeah, I certainly believe that he is, and maybe he isn't. But my rationale is, I know Danny Jacobs is very close to the level of Golovkin and Alvarez, and those are pound-for-pound level fighters. So he's just a slight notch below that, meaning he's quite damn good. So when I compare him to Prograis, I think Jacobs is better. Again, Prograis may turn out to be better, but he's got to prove it. When you look at Inoue against, he fought Emmanuel Rodriguez and Nonito Donaire. Do I think Danny Jacobs is better than a 37-year-old Nonito Donaire? Yeah, I really do. I think Donaire had, he turned back some of the years. He had a damn good performance, and I hope he retires on it, honestly. But Jacobs, to me, is better than a 37-year-old Donaire. I mean, when you look at Donaire's recent history, he's not even beaten guys like Jesse Magdaleno. He really hasn't had a clear win over a top 10 guy in quite a while. I mean, the last one I think was Ryan Burnett, and that was a freak injury. So I think Jacobs qualifies as a better win than those. As you mentioned, Navarrete. I mean, we acknowledge that the competition is not quite on that level, though I do think you're headed in the right direction with encouraging these guys to fight a bit more. I wish most of these guys would go to the old Golovkin work rate where he was fighting 4 times a year. I mean, it would just be nice so these guys are in the spotlight. And even if you just fight every season, you're going to build your brand that way, and that's why K2 is so successful with somebody like Golovkin. They went to the East Coast, the West Coast. They went over to Monte Carlo. They went to Europe. They went over wherever they had to start building bridges and getting fans on board. So when you break that down, I think Danny Jacobs is the best opponent any of these guys fought. I know it wasn't a fight of the year type thing, but he won. He got the job done. I do think that adds some context too. So I'm not a stickler if somebody has somebody else. And then he's moving up one traditional weight class and beating a top 5 guy. And again, I realize, the naysayers are like, well, he's ready for the taking. This is a cherry pick. I get it. I really do. I understand that. But when you take the other side of that as well, Kovalev was still beating top 10 guys. He was still a world-class operator. And how many other guys can do what he just did? How many other guys can jump up a traditional weight class and, cleanly knock out a top 5 guy like that? I don't think there are very many middleweights in the world who can do that. Maybe Inoue could move up to 126 and knock out a top 5 featherweight. Maybe. Are they going to be as credentialed as Kovalev? There aren't many guys there right now, but I just like the prospect of fighting in 2 traditional divisions, beating top 5 guys, and won by a vicious knockout. Again, I don't have any problem if somebody has anything else. There's different ways to cut it, but my choice right now would be Canelo Alvarez. And again, it's not as if you can accuse ESPN of being biased. I mean, Canelo is not an ESPN guy. He fights on DAZN. So, politically, I don't see an alliance there. So it seems okay to me. Anyways, we'll move on to On This Day, and, my good pastor talked about it earlier. You are much more in tune with this because I've seen Raging Bull a couple of times, but it's been years since I've sat down and watched the film. What do you say, John? Because I know what you tell me earlier. You saw the movie on its opening day. Is that right?
Unbelievably, it is. I went with my wife at the time, my mom and dad. We went to a theater in Dublin, California to see it. I don't know how my dad and myself coaxed the girls to go. They're just good sports, I guess. But, the 1980. So I was 22 years old. Oh, my God, 22 years old. Was I 22 years old? Yeah, I was 22 years old.
You're like, give me that back.
Oh, my gosh. But, and I remember vividly because it is a great movie, and Mike and I have discussed it. I think I like it more than Mike. It's a downer movie in a lot of ways, and they didn't even put a lot of the things that Jake LaMotta supposedly or did. He was a pretty rotten person in so many ways, but Robert De Niro was just brilliant. And what I really like too, Jeremiah, is that I'm sure you noticed this, that the boxing scenes were well done, and Robert De Niro was, because sometimes you see movies, and I mean, I love boxing movies, as you know. You've done these shows with Mike and myself, and we have to kind of not look the other way, but just accept that the actor is not very convincing as a fighter. You see it. You just say, look, it's an actor playing a fighter. Okay, blah blah blah. Some are better than others. Some aren't. Now, De Niro was good. He worked with Jake LaMotta for months to get his bob and weave style down. LaMotta did say, I remember years later, look, if I had worked with him when he was younger, I could have made him a champion. Now, obviously, that's hyperbole, but still, De Niro was just tremendous. He gained all that weight. It was shocking.
Yeah, well, De Niro should have said that. If he would have said that 40 years later, if he would have said that today, he might be accurate.
That's true. That's true. So it was one of those, and then the last scenes, and I'm not going to say what, because just in case some people out there haven't seen it, when he's in a real tough way and what he does and to himself, just amazing. And you're sitting there saying to yourself, well, there's the Oscar winner, because it was that, and he did. He won the Oscar for that. And the movie, I love the little little bits pieces of Martin Scorsese would throw in there. For example, I'm sure you remember the movie. Most of the movies black and white, but when they did their home movies, when they're shooting their home movies, that was in color. You know, I just love that little bits of business that he threw in there, and I guess that's probably a movie geeks minute there for you, a second, but. It's a great movie, great acting. Joe Pesci and De Niro are just tremendous, almost funny in a way. I mean, nobody cusses like those two guys, and it's just funny. Maybe Mike cusses as good as those two guys, but
I would say he's up there. Yeah,
yeah.
He's a world class operator in that regard.
He is, and he's good. And he's funny too, just like them. So he'd hang with them right there. But yeah, that was just, and when we walked out of the theater, I can still remember my mom looked over at my dad and myself. Why did we go see this movie? That guy was a real jerk. And I mean, that's true. He was a real jerk, and God, he lived forever almost. I think he was like 94 when he died, Jake LaMotta. But anybody who hasn't seen it, you have to see it just because. It's historical. The whole part about Billy Fox, you know, the fight that LaMotta threw, and he's trying to go down. Joe Pesci is telling him, all you got to do is fall down. He can't do it, and when he tries to do it, it's so ridiculously fake, and that's true. That's factual. People that were there were going, oh my God, this is fake, and he admitted that it was. So anybody that likes boxing, likes film, likes acting or whatever, you're going to enjoy it. It's grim, like we said, but it's a historical look at a sense at the 1940s and 50s and 60s and what this guy did. And as a movie, there's a lot of debate. A lot of people think it's the greatest boxing movie ever. I don't, but it's right there. It's right in the top three, I think. And maybe because we know what Mike would be saying. He'd be interrupting me, go, no, it's Rocky. And go, yeah, I know, Mike. We've discussed this before, but
we've cleared this one up. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, but it is, and you remember parts of it, right? I'm sure you might not have seen it in a long time, but I'm sure you remember it.
Yeah. And the thing I would touch on though, before I reference any scenes, is that I like movies like that, and I watch shows like that because personally I'm not a fan of movies that it's like superhero movies that have become so prevalent nowadays in these. They're taking this moral compass and they're leaving it in a straight and narrow. And again, I know with superhero movies, they try to have some moral ambiguity, but eventually it's always the good guys versus the bad guys. The good guys always win. And the fact is, for most people who have ever lived, morality is not. It's not this. I mean, you're constantly conflicted. Do you lie? Do you tell the truth? And it's a situational basis. And people who you think, people who are glamorized and put on these pedestals, almost deified in the public light, tons of these people did bad stuff behind the scenes. I've heard JFK did some things. I've heard, John Lennon did some things. The thing about it is we're human, and I think when you make a movie which has moral ambiguity in it, or the morality is more in a gray area, I just think it's more truthful. It's just more what we are as humans. And again, that's not to say that we're all bad or we're all good. I'm not putting anybody into compartments at all. Some people are morally better than others. That's for sure. Some people are worse than others. That's for sure. But what I'm saying is most of us, there are times. Sometimes we do the wrong thing. Sometimes we do the right thing. LaMotta, however, I read the book after I watched the film, and not immediately after, but I read the book after I watched the film. And really, the book makes Jake LaMotta seem worse than he did in the film. I can't remember. I can't remember if this happened in the film, but I remember there was a part in Jake LaMotta's book where he was talking about he raped a chick in the back of a car, and his excuse, his rationale for doing it was, fuck it. I mean, that's really, I guess she was a virgin, and he just said fuck it, and you could just see, that he's painting. What'd you say?
I said pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but and I actually really like the book. It's not as if it's exceptionally written or it's this literary masterpiece, because it's certainly not that. But the fact that LaMotta is so candid to the point of being truthful, that things you wouldn't want to admit in the public sphere because you would not want people to see you in that negative light. He just seems as if that's kind of his attitude. Fuck it, and he revealed a lot of things that were pretty damning. And again, this I'm not having this take to glamorize him in any way, because he did seem like he was kind of a, but if they had injected everything into the book, into the film, I think people would say, hey, this guy's worse than we thought. But for some of the scenes, one of the things that I remember is the part where he assumes his wife is cheating on him, and then he goes and beats the shit out of, who is it, his manager? Because I think that's what they got wrong. I think initially he beats his brother's ass, but in the movie they portrayed as his manager, if I'm not mistaken.
He beats his brother up, and his brother was kind of managing him as.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he beats his wife. Oh my God, he knocks her out and hits his brother and beats him up. Yeah, it was just so he's a brute. He's a thug. He's a brute in the movie. He's abusive. They make it in the movie. It's just that he thinks he's ugly, and everybody else thinks he is. He's a freak. So if he gets a little jealous, he's going to beat up her. He's going to beat up anybody that he thinks might have betrayed him. Yeah, I read the book 2 years ago, and I don't remember that part, but I'm sure that happened. Why he would put it in? He wouldn't put it in the book just for the heck of it. So yeah, he was a despicable person in a lot of ways. But the thing is I agree with you too, that it's like when I read a lot of biographies, and I don't want to read a biography that's one way or the other. In other words, I don't want to read a hit job biography, and I don't want to read a glamorous biography. I want to read a biography, and I don't care who it is, from Abraham Lincoln to Joe Louis to John F. Kennedy, like you said, anybody. I want to know, because we're just people, and we have feet of clay, right? So we're complicated. So there's going to be things that in everyone's life that they do that's embarrassing, and in some people like LaMotta, really bad. But you want to know, right? You want to know, if you want to get a pretty good feel for this person, you need to know pretty much all of it. And you're right. I'm sure the reason they kept that out is they thought, oh my God, who's going to want to watch a movie about a rapist? Right? So they left it out on purpose. So that's why I think a lot of times they say based on a true story. They don't put all of it in, but too bad we don't have Martin Scorsese on to ask him. But I bet you it was just a decision that now we'll leave that out. People get the impression. I mean, no one would be surprised, I'm sure, if they didn't know that from the book, that when you said that, when people listen to this, they go, oh, yeah, that doesn't surprise me, Jake LaMotta. So, yeah. But his boyhood friend, Rocky Graziano, my other Italian hero, Jake never was, but Rocky was, and my dad as well, he was like the polar opposite of Jake, and they were really, really good friends, but they were totally different people. Rocky was a really good guy, and he didn't do anything. He was just married once, and great guy, and everybody said that. But that's what makes these kind of things so interesting, is the uniqueness of people. And you're right, when you've got that negative part about a person, look, if you want to watch something about a person that's like a movie like Raging Bull, I mean, it's called Raging Bull. So not just as a fighter, I mean, as a person, he was that way too. So that's what you get.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that way with movies or, music too. naturally I'm not a downer. I'm not a person who's ever claimed to be depressed or, sure, I've had hardships. I grew up poor. I'm not going to get into my backstory, but the point is that I'm not the kind of person who gets down on myself, sees the world in an overall negative light and, this and that. But I still have a strong appreciation for guys who can tell, especially in music, but it also translates into film, guys who can, persevere through that, or, they do something that's messed up. And it's not that I'm relating to them like raping somebody or killing somebody, but I can relate to the depths. I can relate to the struggle. I can relate to all this other stuff, because it's not as if I haven't experienced it in my life, but there's something that draws you in as a viewer or as a listener, somebody telling you their rags to riches story, where, hey, I was down here and now I'm up here. Right? That's part of the reason why, Tyson Fury's story has endeared him to so many, is because, he overcomes this and he overcomes that, and a lot of people can relate to him. And again, with Jake LaMotta, yeah, there are a lot of things that I cannot relate to. Again, rape is not something I know anything about. Beating my brother up because I think he messed with a girlfriend of mine, that's not something I can relate to. But again, I do think there is something to it, like that darkness, that, again, not necessarily you're relating to, but that intrigues you so much, because there are levels to it that some of us have frankly never experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is the darkness, because we know that as people, we could never go down that road like he perhaps did, but it's still interesting. And it is the full picture of a human being, and it's not always, like I said, it's not always glamorous. There's ugly parts of it with his life, and most celebrities. I'll just throw one at you right now. I loved Evel Knievel as a kid. Jeremiah, you talk about an icon, and I just recently read a biography about him, and I knew all the basics about him, but I didn't know the depth of some of the things he did, and oh my gosh, and this book alleges, and I don't hear anybody denying it, that Evel Knievel did some terrible things during his life. And while I'm reading it, I'm just shaking my head, going, "Wow, man."
Is he still your hero?
I had heard things, but I didn't realize that there was so many things when he was at the height of his career, and I could not miss him when he would be on the Wide World of Sports and he was going to do one of his jumps. And he was an icon. He was with Muhammad Ali. He was like that. He was that popular. Not that popular, but he was like an icon. And Elvis in the late 60s and 70s, he was that popular for a number of years. He was in movies, a couple of movies with him, and one made him, George Hamilton played him. He was it for a while to us guys, but man, I thought, God, you're talking about the immoral thing.
Is he still your hero, John?
Hey, I think it was very simple. When I used to watch him jump, I used to go, man, this guy got some balls to do those jumps. And then reading the same thing that I read afterwards, and then reading in here, it was confirmed that there were times when he knew he wasn't going to make it, but on one of these jumps, but he wasn't going to let the fans down, like in Wembley. And I'm thinking, my God, here you're going to be on a motorcycle going close to 100 miles an hour jumping. You're going to crash, but you're not walking away. Nope. You're still doing it. So that part, and maybe that's some kind of a segue into boxers in a way, Jeremiah. We all admire their guts, right? We love their determination. We love their guts. We love their backstories, like you said about Tyson Fury. Pull yourself up from some darkness that you're in and make it back. And in his case, but in Evel's case, he had nothing either. He was super poor and a really dysfunctional childhood and all kinds of things. Kind of explains some of the things that he did as an adult. But he had moxie, Jeremiah, and that's what I loved as a kid, because we're jumping on our bikes when I was a kid, but he's going down on a Harley, going 95 miles an hour on a little ramp. He's jumping over buses, and I'll watch it on YouTube and still go, man, that Evel Knievel, he was something else. So, but it's that complete picture like we were talking about, and that's like Raging Bull. I mean, you get the complete picture, warts and all, but when they show the Robinson fight in that movie, and he's getting pounded and he never goes down, and he's so proud of that, That's true. He did say to Sugar Ray Robinson, I never went down, Ray. I mean, he hit him, he got pounded on the ropes. But dang, and there you go. It's that we love that too about boxers, right? I'm saying it again. That guts, we love it when a guy battles back, or in this case can take it. Like Jeff Horn, Jeff Horn was in a world of hurt this morning, I guess, and he landed a big rocket right hand and saved his career. And he might have won the decision anyway, but he knocked the guy down a couple times, and we love that kind of stuff because that shows guts and determination, and that's just human nature. We can't help ourselves in a way. We like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, did you catch that fight by chance, the Horn Zarafa fight?
I did not. My main mate, and he writes for The Grueling Truth too, Anthony Cox, wrote an article. He was watching it, and he wrote something for me on Max, and I want to see it because I heard that it's one of the fights of the year, and I know the results, obviously, and what happened and what Jeff was doing, and that's a very impressive victory by Jeff Horn, wouldn't you think? I mean, I thought he'd lose again, to be honest. I thought he's been in some tough fights. He's only had like 22 fights, I think, but he's been in some tough wars, and that's the way he fights. And he's not going to have a long career. But he came back and won that fight. Nobody's complaining about the decision. And one of the judges had it 94-94, I guess, and they were like, what? So all kudos to the Hornet. He came back and did the job.
Yeah, that's definitely one that I've been keeping an eye out for during the day because I want to catch it. I mean, Jeff is a guy that I've been following for a while. Actually, I wrote about him. I've mentioned this, so I'm not trying to – it's not bragging. I'm just trying to make sure, that I get my story there, so there's some context. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I wrote about Jeff because I was doing a series called Prospect Watch, and I would have one, out every month. Actually, this was before I was with The Grueling Truth, however, and I wrote about Jeff Horn before he even came to American shores, and his father actually sent me an email, thanked me, said they appreciate it, et cetera, and then Jeff was nice enough to come on the show. So he's a genuinely nice guy. His father is too. So I've always been rooting for him. And when he did well against Pacquiao, I was actually surprised. And when you put it into context, I mean, I know it is styles, but Jeff Horn's performance, whether you saw him win or lose, was probably better than Keith Thurman's. So, I mean, he deserves some credit. And he, being at 160, he moved up a traditional weight class. I heard he looked a little bit tighter in this as, maybe he's filling out physically better at 160. But, yeah, I really liked the fight because initially the first Zarafa fight was just kind of viewed as a get acclimated to the weight fight, and then he gets upset, and then a bunch of people are like, well, he's going to lose the rematch after getting beat clearly in the first one. Then he comes back and does it. So good for him. I'm happy for the guy. Yeah, and I wish him more success. But that is one fight that I've got to catch, and so I can chit chat about that one as well.
Sure.
Sorry about that. But, I've definitely got to catch that one. I'm just going to keep an eye out and see if it's on Daily Motion or YouTube. I did see a link on YouTube, but it was I think it was the ninth round or whichever one you're referencing, which was, the good one. Because I even saw Paul Cupid, who does some writing for us too, who was saying that he had it like 10-8 for Zarafa up until the knockdown, and he was wondering how other people scored it. So, I mean, just that sort of conversation makes me interested in the whole fight. And so, yeah, we've got to keep an eye out for that, watch that one too. And also, I want to go to one more point. I saw that Mikey Garcia is fighting Jesse Vargas, and I assume it's at welterweight. I didn't see but that's my assumption. Vargas is best off at 147. What do you think of that fight? I mean, it seems to me as if Mikey Garcia is hell-bent on trying to snatch a title at 147, and I'm just personally not convinced that he belongs at the weight. He to me, he's just not a pound-for-pound operator there, and he really needs to go back down to 140, 135. It sucks that the Lomachenko fight does not seem as if it's happening, but 147, he just kind of – I'm not saying he's delusional, but it just, after watching that performance, I'm just not convinced that he belongs in that division.
Yeah, I agree. I think he wants one of the trinkets. That's a pet peeve with me with all these welterweight titles, all titles. I hate it that there are so many belts. Mike and I will joke around, and I've told him, hell, you just show up and they give you a title now. You know, it used to be such a big deal years ago, and now they have so many available. It's just cheapened it, and I think you're onto something. I think he wants that for his legacy, but he did not look right at 147 to me. I mean, obviously he was fighting Errol Spence, but he looked so small and he couldn't do anything. And then you compare what Sean Porter was able to do with Errol Spence. Now, we know it's styles. We know all that. But Mikey has never looked ever in any of his fights like he did in the Errol Spence fight to me. And Errol Spence isn't the best fighter in the world. He's certainly good. But I think he ought to be fighting at 140. I don't. There are so many good fights down there for him. The guys we've been mentioning, he could fight the Rougarou, Regis Prograis. He could fight Ramirez. He could fight Josh Taylor. He could fight Baranchek. I mean, there are so many good fights, but there's something about 147. Maybe there's more money. I don't know, but Eddie Hearn signed him, and I don't know how much. That was a bit of a surprise because from what I heard, Jeremiah, there was a lot of talk that Mikey was going to fight Manny Pacquiao, and boy, I think you'd make more money fighting Manny Pacquiao than fighting Jesse Vargas. So I don't, maybe he didn't really want to fight Manny Pacquiao. I don't know. So it's a bit of a perplexer. Mikey's always gone by the beat of his own drummer, which is cool. He should. He should run. He likes to run his career his own way. Cool. I respect that. But I don't think it's an easy out with Jesse Vargas. I think we're going to learn a lot about Mikey. Jesse's a good fighter, and Jesse's a really determined fighter, and Jesse is a natural welterweight. So I hope, I'm pretty sure, that he doesn't think it's going to be easy against Jesse. I don't even really know what to think, to be honest, because we've only seen him once at 147. And to me, he didn't look good. I mean, obviously, like we said, he's fighting Errol Spence, but he looked sluggish. You know, he didn't look like he was at his right weight. There's just something was not just Errol. There was more to it. I could be all wrong. Maybe he'll look sharp and crisp against Jesse Vargas, but something was off, and not just the opponent he was fighting. Obviously, that was a big issue too, but he just doesn't look right. That's why I agree with you. He should go back down to 140 and fight those guys, but he's going to do it his way.
Yeah. As you said, I mean, just marching to the beat of his own drum. And again, it's fine. I don't mind guys taking control of their own careers. In boxing, you can get away with it a bit more, but it just feels as if it feels as if we're losing yet another fighter, who's just not maximizing his potential. I mean, he just kind of breezes through 126, 130, never really establishes dominance in those classes. He becomes the number one guy at, 135. He becomes what I think maybe the number one ranked guy at 140 as well. But it doesn't feel like he's really planting his stake, carving out his legacy. He's not really fighting the best guys available. And it's not to say he hasn't gotten some good victories, but for a guy who would call himself a 3-division champion, it's just, there's a lot to be desired there. And then he takes, 2 years off because of the top rank thing. And now, he gets beat clearly by Spence. He may lose to Jesse Vargas. It is a possibility. Yeah. It just seems like he's not really. He's just not he's not maximizing his potential, and it's disappointing because when I look at a guy who's that skillful, if this was an 8-division setup, and he's down to 135. I mean, he might have he might have been the lightweight champion already. I mean, him and Lomachenko might have already happened, but again, like so many modern fighters, there's just a lot of questions that are going to be left, and it's unfortunate. There's just too many guys who aren't quite getting there. I mean, I think we're actually leaving a lot of great fighters on the table. It's like I think about a lot of these guys. It's like Guillermo Rigondeaux. I mean, I was never a big fan, but if he gets Leo Santa Cruz and Carl Frampton at 122, how do we look at him now compared to, or how do we look at him then compared to now, right? If Lomachenko isn't hindered by, politically down at 126, when, Santa Cruz and Frampton were down there, right? I mean, what does his legacy look like already? I mean, Lomachenko actually, and I've gone to this a few times, but they tried getting, they beat Walters, and Walters used to be the number one guy at 126 until he moved up. They tried getting Simple Vatica. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. He was highly ranked. I mean, it's just so many of these guys are being denied the resumes and credentials they deserve because of politics, and it's unfortunate. Again, I just think we're leaving a lot of great fighters on the table. And, like you referenced earlier, these guys should be fighting at least 4 times a year, I think. And, again, they'd be bigger stars. They'd make more money. They'd have better resumes. What do I know, though? I am just a fan. I'm not a manager. I'm not a promoter. Anyways, do you have any final words, John?
Well, no, I agree. And the other thing they ought to think about is that it would really help the sport. It would grow the sport if they fight more. And they're not going to think like that because most of them are businessmen now. Well, I shouldn't say most of them. Some of them are businessmen. And I don't blame them. Boxing has so many despicable people in it that you have to take care of yourself. If you're lucky if you get a couple of people you can trust. I get it. But sometimes you got to think beyond just your narrow little focus here and expand your horizons and think like you said earlier, Jeremiah, about the way they handled Triple G. That was brilliant, the way they had him. When you were talking about that, I was nodding, going, "That's right." I mean, he had him fighting East Coast, West Coast, Monte Carlo, and it was great because he had been screwed for so many years before. And he didn't get anything, basically, and then, of course, he ended up getting screwed again. That's another, I think we talked about that one on a previous show. Golovkin. But still, his management team really knew how to market and promote him, and it helped boxing. I mean, my gosh, I saw him in Carson, Golovkin, and he was like a rock star to most of the people. This was 5 or 6 years ago now, but that's how you build a boxer up, and it helps the sport, like I said. But it doesn't seem to be that way. Is it okay if I throw a plug in for my new book, Jeremiah?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Throw as many plug-ins as you want, man.
Oh my God, it's so shameless. But I got a new book. If people don't know, it's called Blood on My Notebook. I did a show with Mike last week. It was great. It was very nice of Mike to do that. It's called Blood on My Notebook: Dispatches from the World of Professional Boxing. It's my personal journey over the last 10 years, compilation of articles and insight and some things never before published. It's my baby, and I'm thrilled that it's got a 5-star rating on Amazon, and Mike loved it, which really made me happy. So you just go on Amazon, you type in Blood in My Notebook by John J. Raspanti, or just Blood in My Notebook, and you'll see it. And thanks to you for helping to promote it. I really appreciate you guys on The Grueling Truth. And it's my baby, and I loved it, and I'm just very proud of it.
Yeah, and I am thankful for you writing. What is your middle name by chance?
It's Joseph So John J, and I heard you say J when you started the program. I heard you say Jeremiah J, right?
Yeah, well, actually, that's why I mentioned it, because I'm like, well, you're doing John J. Raspanti, and I'm Jeremiah J. Preisser, and my middle name actually is Joseph.
Oh, you and me both. Okay, and I'll tell you real fast, the reason that I go by John J. Raspanti in all my articles, and Mike would love this, is because I'm a junior, and my dad was John J. Raspanti Sr., so it's kind of a tribute to my father. I was always just John. They rarely called me Jay, but he used the J a lot more. But when I started writing in boxing, since he was the man that I really got into boxing because of him and my grandfather and other people. But my dad loved it, and I loved him, and I still do, obviously. You know, he's not with us anymore, and I thought I'm gonna have everything I write under the byline of John J. Raspanti because that's who I am and that's who my dad was, and a lot of this is because of him. So there's some background you probably didn't even require knowing, but that's the real story there, Jeremiah.
Hey, that's very cool. And I'm not a junior myself, so my story is not quite similar, but interesting enough, it's not that far off. My father's original name, my father was adopted in Miami. His original first name was Jeremiah. His middle name is Joseph, and his last name, of course, is Preisser. So the thing about it, though, the twist that makes this different is my father's adopted parents renamed him Gerald. So I'm not quite a junior. Had they not changed his name, had they kept it Jeremiah, which is kind of odd because my grandmother was a Catholic nun, and I know people are like, oh, well, you know, nuns aren't supposed to have sex and babies and all that stuff. Well, again, my father was adopted, so there was that. Right. And then she gave up the nunnery thing and eventually became a school teacher. Whatever. That's background people don't need to know. But had they not changed my father's name, I would also be a junior. So JJP, JJR.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Small world, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep. It's close. Not quite the same, but it's close. Anyways, with that, John, I want to thank you for coming on. It's always good having you on. I always appreciate talking to you.
Oh, yeah, I love it, Jeremiah. And as you said earlier off air, if you want to try to do this on more Wednesdays, I'm almost always available. It's been weird lately, but I love to do this. It's great to talk to you, too. It's a nice change of pace. You obviously know your stuff. And JJP and JJR, you know, we're like kindred spirits. So I might be 100 years older than you, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's all good, baby. Anyways, we probably won't do next Wednesday because of the holidays. Yes. But still, we'll look forward to the new year. Hopefully we'll get together more often. Go out and buy the book. Christmas is almost here. And so for Jeremiah Preisser, John Raspanti, you've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak. Thank you all.